My name isn't important anymore. But for the sake of the story, call me Daniel. For 10 years, I worked for a power company that handled transmission lines across the northern Midwest Montana, the Dakotas, even parts of Wyoming. My official title was damage assessor. My job was to drive out, usually alone, to wherever a tower went down or a line failed, figure out what caused the outage, and determine what equipment and crew would be needed to fix it. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid well. It also put me in some of the loneliest stretches of America, miles from the nearest ranch, where a person could vanish without a trace. I thought I'd seen it alt-wisters bending steel towers into pretzels, blizzards caking lines with ice so thick they snapped like twigs, and even wildfires that turned entire corridors of towers into black skeletons. But nothing prepared me for what I saw outside Dickinson, North Dakota, in 2006. I need to tell you about that night. Not because I want to relive it, I don't, but because after all these years, I can't stop wondering whether it was real, whether I was losing my mind, or whether something ancient and incomprehensible still stalks the Great Plains when the lights go out. It started just after 2 a.m. when I got the call. Dickinson about 15,000 people back, then was completely dark. The power plant feeding the city was far to the east, so something in between had failed. Something catastrophic enough to cut off every household, every business, every streetlight. By the time I arrived, it was after 4 in the morning. Driving into a darkened city is an experience you never get used to. A place meant to glow with human life suddenly looks abandoned. Post-apocalyptic. There were faint glimmers here and there, convenience stores with generators, headlights sweeping down empty streets, but the rest of Dickinson sat in suffocating blackness. Emergency operations had been set up at the Public Safety Center on the north end of town. The police chief and fire captain were already running things with military precision. You could tell they were used to blizzards. But there was something else in the air that night, an edge, a tension I couldn't place. I introduced myself, explained I'd be driving the line east until I found the cause. That's when the chief surprised me by asking if I wanted an armed escort. That had never happened before. Usually, the only threats were deer, rattlesnakes, or the occasional drunk who mistook me for a trespasser. I laughed it off, said I'd be fine. If I had known what was waiting, I would have begged him to send every squad car in the county. The transmission line corridor east of Dickinson is a wide clearing that runs for miles. A grassy swath with towers standing like skeletal giants every quarter mile. At night, in April, with no moon showing, it felt like driving through the world's longest graveyard. I stopped at the first tower, shined my new Surefire flashlight up at its latticework. Solid. No damage. I got back in the truck and kept driving, scanning the tree leans for fallen timber. That was when my beam caught something strange. The woods to the south looked torn apart, branches snapped, underbrush flattened, and there, impossibly, an entire ash tree, roots and all, lay perched across the upper canopy of several other trees, as though plucked from the earth and carefully placed on top of them. I remember just standing there, shaking my head. A storm couldn't do that. Vandals. They'd need a crane or helicopter. The leaves were still green and full, which meant it had happened recently. I pulled out my digital Nikon, snapped a dozen pictures. Each flash burst lit up the clearing like lightning. That's when I realized the damage stretched deep into the woods, farther than my light could reach. Then came the crack. Loud. Heavy. From behind me. I spun, flashlight cutting through darkness. Heart hammering. Nothing. Maybe a moose. Maybe a bear. I stuffed the camera back in my satchel, climbed into the truck, and pressed on. But my nerves were jangling. Half an hour later, I reached the source of the outage. One look, and I knew this wasn't any storm damage. Shards of steel littered the ground. The concrete anchors were bent at grotesque angles. The entire top half of the 100-foot tower was gone. Not dangling. Not folded over, just gone. Ripped away. And lodged 70 feet up in the twisted frame was another ash tree. Roots. Leaves. Whole. Jammed into the metal like a child hiding food under a table. I nearly dropped my coffee when my light revealed it. I walked slowly around the base, trying to comprehend the force it would take to do this. That's when I noticed the gouges. Along the sheared steel beams were segmented grooves, 10 inches across. Uniform. Like bite marks. I'd seen erosion. I'd seen stress fractures. This wasn't either. Something had chewed the tower apart. I took more pictures. 30 at least. Muttering notes into my recorder. But I kept glancing over my shoulder. Twice I thought I heard movement in the trees. Twice I told myself it was just the wind. Then came another crack. And a heavy thump. Much closer. The ground quivered under my boots. I froze. The thumping continued. Steady. Approaching. Each impact rippled through the earth. Through my legs. Into my chest. I bolted for the truck. Fumbling the keys. Slamming the door. Locking it twice. For several minutes I just sat there. Breathing hard. Staring into blackness beyond the windshield. Finally, I forced myself onward. I still needed to confirm whether the next tower had been hit. Slowly, cautiously, I drove east. The cables from the ruined tower lay torn across the clearing. Sparking weakly, I radioed headquarters. Told them to cut power to 2 more towers for safety. Once the sparks died, I tested with my voltage meter. Then tapped them off with insulated gloves. Routine motions. But my hands shook the entire time. Another thump echoed. Closer now. I swung my light at the tree lean. Nothing. But the sound persisted. Rhythmic. Unmistakable. It wasn't an echo. Something was walking toward me. At the next tower. I leapt out. Circled quickly. No damage. Relief surged. But as I turned back to the truck, the moon slid free from the clouds. That was when I saw it. North of the clearing, rising above the trees, stood a shape, 50 feet tall at least, featureless in the dim glow, not swaying like a tree, not moving like smoke, just standing, looking at me. Every instinct screamed not to shine my light. I knew it was staring right back. We stayed locked like that, man and shadow, for what felt like hours, though it was seconds. Then it lurched forward. Branches snapped like gunfire. The ground shook with each step. I ran. I don't even remember crossing the clearing. Just the slam of the truck door. The engine roaring. Tires spinning dirt. Headlights swept across the corridor and caught it. Not tree trunks. Legs. Massive. Gray-black. Scarred like diseased bark. Moving. I screamed and floored the accelerator. The clearing became a tunnel of terror. Towers whipping past as I barreled west. Behind me, thumps shook the truck. Metal screeched. Towers collapsing under unseen hands. In the rearview mirror, I saw darkness swallowing the sky. And then something hurtled overhead, crashing into the ground before me. I swerved violently. It was a steel beam, torn from a tower, thrown like a spear. If it had hit me, I wouldn't be here. I don't know how fast I was going. 90, maybe more. But the thing followed. Relentless, tearing down towers as it came. I could feel its pursuit in my bones. Every footfall rattling through the steering column. Finally, mercifully, Dickinson's dark streets appeared ahead. Buildings swallowed me in their shadows. I dared not look back until I reached the emergency center. And when I did, there was nothing. Just night. Silent. Empty. Inside, the chiefs asked what I'd found. My mouth opened. I almost told them. About the trees. The teeth marks. The tower ripped like paper. About the thing that chased me across miles of clearing. But who would believe it? I said the words that saved me. Tornado. A freak. Localized storm had torn through. Destroyed 6 towers. That's all. They accepted it. Wrote it down. At dawn, crews confirmed the damage. 6 towers collapsed. 1 flattened entirely. Nothing left but twisted steel. No footprints. No debris from aircraft. No sign of anything except destruction. Back at my desk, I reviewed the photos. The grooves on the steel matched perfectly with gouges on the uprooted tree. Regular. Segmented. Biting gouges. Teeth marks. Not machine. Not weather. Something had bitten through both wood and steel as if they were nothing. That realization still wakes me at night. I quit within a year. Claimed burnout. The truth was, I couldn't drive another line without imagining that colossal shadow striding out of the trees. I've kept quiet for nearly 2 decades. The official report still says tornado, but when I close my eyes, I see its silhouette under the moon, standing silent above the pines. And I wonder, how many other blackouts weren't storms? How many towers went down not because of nature, but because something hungrier walked the plains? That's the story. Believe it or not. It happened as I told it. I don't expect everyone to take me at my word, but I've carried this too long in silence. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think about what I saw? Was it a creature? A natural force we can't explain? Or something else entirely? And beyond that, what does it say about how violence and destruction shape our lives? Do we turn away, like I did, and write them off as storms? Or do we confront them, even when no one believes us? Share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me where you stand. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that silence only feeds the monsters. Drop it straight into a YouTube script,